welcome to this special edition of Culture on I-24 News. I'm Oded Grober. Thank you for joining me. Today we devote our show to one of the masters of art, Pablo Picasso, in the coastal town of Antibes in the south of France, in a lovely castle. Picasso spent a few months in 1946. That castle would later become the Antibes Picasso Museum. In it are sculptures, paintings, etchings, and drawings, most of them made during his stay there. Some of the works may be traveling soon to the city of Ashdod in Israel for an exhibition. I'm very happy to have the Antibes Picasso Museum director, Jean-Louis Andral, here in the studio to tell us all about it and about Picasso's time in Antibes. Jean-Louis Andral, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks to you.
So let's start. Tell me a little bit about the museum in Antibes.
Well, you know, this place is in a castle just on the seaside, and it's a very specific Picasso museum in the fact that it was the first one really devoted to that artist when he was still alive. You see, this big castle was first a kind of archaeological and medieval time museum, because in fact Antibes has a very old Greek and Roman past and Greek and Roman remains. So in that building first was created a museum devoted to, you know, these Greek and Roman times, and the name Grimaldi, Castle Grimaldi, comes because in the Middle Age, the castle during 2 centuries belonged to the Grimaldi family, you know, from Monaco.
Yeah.
So anywhere in that beautiful place, suddenly something happened after the war.
Yeah.
Picasso used to come quite regularly on the French Riviera since the early 1920s. You remember, just to explain you why he loved so much that area, that Picasso was born in Malaga. Malaga is in, you know, Spain, Andalusia, the very, you know, south part of the Spain. So he was born there. Then he went to study in Barcelona, also on the Mediterranean shore. And then in 1904 he moved to Paris, and he settled there. Yeah. And in fact, because, you know, of political reason, he decided never to go back to Spain till Franco would be alive. Yeah. And in fact, Franco died 2 years later than Picasso. So the only
in fact, he never returned to Spain.
He never, ever returned. So in fact, the only Mediterranean kind of part, you know, was the French Riviera, because it was not too far for him. He didn't like to travel. He liked to travel only by car. So a car distance, you know, way. And so when
it's not a bad place to spend some time.
That's right. But you must remember, we are speaking of the early 1920s. On that time, this French Riviera was mainly a touristic place in wintertime.
Right.
Because,
now,
you know,
but to Antibes he came in after World War II. Am I right?
Yes, he came for that specific, you know, occasion that made the collection of the museum. I will tell you in a while. But the very first coming to Antibes and to Cap d'Antibes and Juan-les-Pins were before the war, from the 1920s. Anyway, he liked very much that place. So after the war, he spent the whole war in Paris. After the war, he really wanted to go back there, and he went back. And he was in 1946 renting a little house in one of these, you know, etchings printers, and at that time he was with a new love, a young woman called Françoise Gillot that he just met in December 43 in Paris, and they went there.
Back then they were still happy.
Yeah, exactly. And they went there, and, you know, Picasso had no space to really work. You know, it was not a studio, tiny rooms. You know, he could do drawings, sheets of paper that size, but no
Nothing
paintings.
Bigger.
So through a common friend, he was introduced to the curator of that Grimaldi Castle, you know, the Museum of Antibes, and that gentleman told Picasso, "Look, I have a big room on the second floor. Why don't you come? And I give you the key, and you can work every day."
Right. Now, at that point, we should say Picasso was already very well established, very well known. He wasn't some...
Listen, he was 65 at that time. He was the most famous painter, you know, from the Western world. He was really what we would call today a people, you know. Plenty of his photographic pictures were on Time magazine, Life. So he was really, you know, everybody knew him in the street.
It was an honor for the museum to have him there. And
of course. So he stayed there, and during 2 months, between mid-September and mid-November 1946, he came almost every afternoon. He was not living in the castle. He was just coming to work as a studio. Yeah. And he did beautiful works, paintings and drawings, works on paper, and on very specific materials, because at that time, after the war, you couldn't find, proper paint for painters or proper canvases.
Canvas.
Yeah, nothing. So he painted on plywood, because fishermen place boats,
Whatever he could find there.
and Eternit panel for the renovation works of the houses, and industrial paint. That was really something incredible.
Wow.
And
that certainly sets his work that he did there apart from the rest of his work.
absolutely, and that's why we call that the Antibes period, which is a very happy time, because
Although
it's,
it was a short period.
well, I mean, it's 2 months of work.
2
It's
months.
very short.
But he was very prolific. I mean, he managed in these 2
Yeah,
months.
Picasso was prolific his whole life,
Yeah.
including during vacation and holidays. So in Antibes it was the same. And the funny thing is that these works are not very numerous. We have about 25 paintings, but sometimes very important size, and a lot of drawings. But when he moved to Paris at the end, of that time, mid-November, he could not take them in his car because they were too big, so he just let them there without telling anything. And from that time, the museum, this place, became a kind of Picasso museum, because the Picasso paintings were installed in the archaeological remains, and it was an incredible museography. You could not do that today. And Picasso loved it so much that regularly he gave some more works, and that became a kind of a Picasso.
So it never changed from what it was before to the Picasso Museum. It just became the Picasso Museum.
Yeah, and it was rebaptized Picasso Museum by the city of Antibes in 1966.
It's a wonderful story. I mean, the fact that he could repay his debt to the place with just leaving works and creating this unique opportunity to see his work in a place where otherwise it would be very surprising to have his work there.
And this is the very specific thing of that museum. As you have other Picasso museums. There was another one made in France after Picasso's death in Paris. Then the one in Barcelona was also from the 60s, and in 2003 a new museum opened in Malaga. But the very specific thing in Antibes is that you can see now the works where they were created, in the very same place, the same light, the same atmosphere. And we did big renovation works between 2006 and 2008, and we really tried to put back, the real volumes of the room where Picasso worked.
Wonderful.
And for the visitors, it's quite an experience to see this collection where it was really created.
Right. Now, you're in Israel now trying to put together an exhibition in Ashdod of works of Picasso's work.
Yeah.
What can we expect to see there, hopefully?
Well, let me tell you, this is not my first trip here, and I've been doing, years ago, I curated some shows in the Israel Museum and in the Tel Aviv Museum as well, and all of them were done with a very good friend of mine, quite important museum people here in Israel, Yona Fisher. Yeah. Yona Fisher was a curator-in-chief in Jerusalem Israel Museum, and then he directed the Tel Aviv Museum, and at the last museum he took care of was the Ashdod Museum between 2005 and 2011. So I didn't know that museum, and I went there, and the people there explained me that there is a kind of Mediterranean festival every year, and that the museum is producing a show, in connection with that festival.
Right.
And they asked me if we could collaborate, on that idea of having two museums next to the sea, with very different stories, but dealing with the Mediterranean, whatever. And I proposed them as the first step, and maybe we'll get some more, but as the first step to make a kind of a small Picasso exhibition made with my own collection, graphic collection, etchings, works on paper, which I have some very beautiful ones. And they seem to be quite, happy with that idea. So if things are going well, I think we could even do it next year, for next festival.
That would be wonderful,
yeah.
Especially if you take into consideration that Ashdod isn't really the cultural capital of Israel.
Yeah.
Having these works, Picasso's works, especially in a place like Antibes, do you feel that you have a responsibility to put it at places that otherwise people wouldn't have an opportunity to see his work?
Well, you know, when you keep a collection, I think your responsibility is to show it wherever it makes sense, you know. And I think for what I said, and if we consider also, and that could be the second step I just mentioned, that I have one of the greatest Picasso ceramic works collection. And
wonderful,
and you know,
wonderful ceramic work.
You know this tradition of ceramics here in that area of the world. I mean, during all the ages. So I think that would be really make sense to gather these two culture. You know, the one from your country and the roots of Picasso and the works he did, dealing really with, because he was really a Mediterranean. Picasso was completely that kind of man.
Yeah. Now, you know, there is a consensus that Picasso is one of the greatest artists that have ever lived, and certainly one of the best known artists.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was he really that good? Do you think that, you know, how long is this going to last?
Well, you know, there are many reasons. First of all, he's a great artist. I mean, you know, I've been dealing with his work since quite a couple of years now, and you never, ever manage to, you know, to know his work really, because you think you know, but each time you find a specific thing that you could not just guess, you know. It's full of different levels. So it's an endless discovery, Picasso, really. This is quite rare. And the other thing is, if he's also so known, because he was also this kind, I said, he was the first one to get from the artist, you know, image, being, you know, in the studio, but not in the real life. And he came to the real life of the photo pictures in every magazine, you know. He became that people I mentioned. And this also, I mean, the face of Picasso is known all over the world. You can go in any village in China.
Also became a brand
the name
in
is
and of
a brand,
itself.
absolutely.
There's a Picasso car. There are numerous cafes called Picasso. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, I'm not dealing with the brand. The family does. So this is not my responsibility, and this is not my business.
No, but do you
not my
feel
decision.
that it maybe cheapens the name of Picasso?
No, I think you have to consider that Picasso was, you know, someone very generous in his life, and now he's really making a lot of people work. And I think it's a nice thing that through the, you know, even after your death, you're still on the
you get people paid
in a way, and you're still on the move, and you're still, you know.
You know what? Speaking of money. Picasso's obviously his works are sold for unbelievable amounts. You know, in 2010, a work over $100 million. Another one before that. It's not uncommon for him to bring in those sums. How do you feel about the fact that the art world is dealing with these sorts of sums of money? Do you think it's justified? Do you think it does good to the art world, to the market?
You know, it's very abstract in a way, because the real value of a work is maybe not the price it got, you know, in a sale. But you know, this is the business, this is the market. You know, you have to deal with that, and it's part of the economy of the world. And the art world is a market, and a very powerful market today. So you know, you have to deal with. There's no question, no choice.
Yeah, you think it's is it a bubble?
No, I think maybe, you know, we had already many different bubbles that blew up, and then new ones. So I think
art actually survived pretty well during the latest crisis. People weren't quick to get rid of their works of art, but were kind of happy to buy maybe a little cheaper than usual.
Yeah. But you know, I think it's not really a bubble. It's really something. The world is completely connected now, and collecting art became a way of, you know, being known and being on the, you know, on the stage. So I think you buy. You put zero on your checks, also to be known in a way, you know. So this is a different matter. It's gambling more or less. So you know, the value of the work in that, nothing to do.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. Let me ask you a personal last question. As someone who deals with Picasso's every day of the year, do you have a favorite work or a favorite period of time?
Well,
maybe the time in Antibes?
That would be the good question in my the good answer, sorry, in my position. But I will tell you. To really love a work, I think you have to really know it. And to know it, you have to live with it in a way. As I don't have any Picasso at home, I have a few in the museum I'm taking care of. So I would tell you that one of the painting in the collection, which is called the gray nude on a green background, which is a beautiful painting from 46, would be my favorite because I can see it almost every day.
That is certainly plays in its advantage. Thank you so much, Jean-Louis Andral.
Thanks to you, Odette.
That's it from us for today. I hope you enjoyed watching our show and that you'll join us again tomorrow for another edition of Culture.